Hi, it's Penny here. Welcome to another reading vlog. This week is starting out kind of rainy, kind of blur, but hopefully this is going to be an exciting week. Hopefully we're going to be finding out about our house stuff for good or bad, I guess. But in terms of reading, I'm going to be reading the whole of the Alcatraz versus the Evil Librarians series, or at least that's the plan. If you've been following me for a while, you know I do really like Brandon Sanderson, but I like more of his epic fantasy works, and when it comes to his more silly stuff, I don't tend to like it as much. However, I did read this first book quite a long time ago and I did like it. I don't know, maybe my reading tastes have changed, but I want to now continue on with the series. But because it's been so long, we're going to go back and reread this first one, and then assuming that I like it, we'll keep going with the series. I do have most of the books as ebooks from my library on my iPad. I guess I will have to read them. I also have the audiobooks from the library, and then the only books I couldn't get on ebooks or audiobooks is the first book and the last book. The first book I've got here, the last book says it's in transit at the library, so hopefully it'll turn up before we get to it. It's going to take me a little while, although I think these books tend to only be about 300 pages long or less, and like the font is decently sized, and there are also pictures throughout it. So I'm expecting these to be fairly fast reads since they are like middle grade books. And all I really remember of the plot is that Alcatraz is an orphan, and then he finds out that there is this kind of secret part of the world, and the evil librarians have been keeping that part of the world like secret from everybody else on the planet. But as I said, it has been a long time since I first read this, so I'll start and then we'll see if it matches my memory. Okay, so quick update before I re-blew my hair because it really needs it. I'm now about halfway through Alcatraz versus the Evil Librarians, and I am actually having a lot of fun with it. I was worried, but I think it's just that this is the kind of story that really suits the kind of silliness that Brandon Sanderson likes to do sometimes, and I feel like some of the other books I've read, which maybe are of a similar tone that I haven't liked, I just don't feel like it's the writing style meshing with the story, or at least that's not the kind of story I want in this writing style. But this writing style, like, it is a lot of fun, and it actually is really clever. And even though sometimes I feel like not that much is really happening, like, I don't know, it's a lot of action, but in other ways I feel like it's sort of slow paced. But the humorous writing style, it's kind of always injecting unexpected ways of describing things or unexpected ways of phrasing things. It keeps it interesting. Also, I will say, right at the front, there is a map of what the world really looks like, including all the free kingdoms that the librarians don't want you to know about. So basically, the whole Pacific Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean are full of like other continents. But really, I'm just glad that New Zealand is still on the map. We might still be in the Hushlands, who don't know anything about this. The Hushlands basically being the world we know that's controlled by the librarians, and then everywhere else you have the freelands. But New Zealand's on the map, so I am happy with that. So yeah, I'm about halfway through. To be honest, what I've realized is I have no idea how this ends. I mean, beyond, it actually starts with telling you how it ends, but beyond that, I don't really remember. Basically, as I said, Alcatraz is an orphan, and then his parents have sent him this bag of sand, which then immediately gets taken away by the librarians, and now Alcatraz and these other people from the freelands are going to infiltrate the head library to try and regain this sand. It seems like a lot of the magic in this world is based on wearing different kinds of glasses, and depending on the sand that the glass for the glasses was made on will determine the different abilities that the glasses have. So I think that could be really interesting. I haven't really done much with the glasses, beyond the fact that at the start of every chapter there's a picture of some glasses. But anyway, the good thing is that I am liking this on a reread. I was afraid that I wouldn't, but I will try and finish this off today so I can let you know my thoughts. So all my neighbors are mowing lawns, cutting down trees, all the noisy things, so hopefully you can't hear it. But I have finished Alcatraz versus the Evil Librarians, and I really enjoyed it. Honestly, I am fairly I'm sure you can hear that. Can you hear it? Let me try closing the door. Okay, so as I said, I was worried that I wouldn't like this, but I ended up just really enjoying it. And like, actually, when I got to the end, I realized why I didn't remember the ending that was set up at the beginning. If you know, you know. Some really nice, I guess, like fourth wall breaking going on, where like we're getting the story told to us by Alcatraz in the future. So like he's telling the story, and throughout the story he's kind of like also taking breaks from the story to talk about how he's telling the story. And it's here where Brandon Sanderson is like breaking a lot of rules of storytelling and talking about why he's doing it. And there's also just like throughout this so much absurdism where things that are completely ridiculous and at first don't make any sense just get thrown in there, so it makes it feel very unpredictable. But then often later on those things will turn out to have made sense, even though they seemed really ridiculous at the time. And I just think overall the silliness is working for me because it's a fun middle grade story, and there's not, like, I think normally when Brandon Sanderson's silliness annoys me, it's because there's silliness and seriousness next door to each other, and I don't feel it meshes well together, whereas this, it's consistently silly. Although there are some serious themes in there. In this one we're dealing with like Alcatraz and I guess the effect of him being an orphan and feeling abandoned. We've also got Bastille, who I think is going to be my favorite character. She is a Knight of Crystallia, something like that, but she also doesn't feel adequate to the job and is made to feel that way by her family. So I finished that one. I have started the next book, which is called The Scrivener's Bones, I think. And so far, I am really enjoying that as well. It seems like we're going to go in this one on a trip to the Library of Alexandria to try and save another one of Alcatraz's relations. What I will say is all of Alcatraz's family members are named after prisons, or more prisons are named after them. And we do get introduced to one character, and her name is Australia. I love it. Anyway, so far, having a good time, although I only have The Scrivener's Bones either on my phone or on my iPad, and I'm not enjoying that reading experience. I'm actually thinking now that when I sell my house and I have a bit of money to spend and buy some things that I want to buy, I might buy myself a Kobo, because I have a Kindle, and I know in America you can read library books on your Kindle, but in New Zealand it doesn't work. But from everything I've read, I can read books from my library on Kobo. So maybe I need a Kobo reader. And also then I could read ebooks without being like locked into the Amazon system, which would be nice. Because I don't mind ebooks, I just don't really like ebooks on my phone or on my iPad, with maybe like graphic novels being the exception. Anyway, if you have a Kobo or any kind of e-reader, let me know if you have any recommendations. Otherwise, I am going to go back and read some more of The Scrivener's Bones. Okay, so it's a day later and I'm only 40% of the way through The Scrivener's Bones, even though it's not that long. I think there's a few reasons for it. Firstly, still not enjoying this phone reading experience, and I realized I don't even have the audiobook for this, so when I went on my run this morning I couldn't listen to the audiobook. As well, when I am on my phone, I found myself scrolling through the Cursed Princess Club instead. So I started this, I think maybe just a week or two ago, and I'm kind of obsessed with it. In a lot of ways, it's like as clever and funny as Alcatraz, but the characters are like so much more lovable, and just like it's got a lot of plot threads coming together that are all like interweaving and coming together in really like heart-stopping kind of ways. So when I pick up my phone and think, oh, I'll read something for a bit, I tend to pull up the Cursed Princess Club instead of The Scrivener's Bones. Part of me is just tempted to like blast through the last, I think I've got about 70 episodes to go, because there's like a webtoon thing, although it has now been published as actual books as well. I think volume 4 might not be quite out yet, but anyway, whenever I pick up my phone I just want to read the Cursed Princess Club. So maybe if I just like blast through it, finish it, then I could get back to Alcatraz, but there's still quite a few episodes to go, so then I feel like I don't have enough time. It's already Thursday, so I already feel like my plan to try and read the whole Alcatraz series by the end of the week, by Sunday, isn't looking that doable. But I do think maybe I'll still try. Maybe. I think the other thing that is maybe stopping me from making as much progress as I could is that the plot isn't really moving, and there isn't really anything that's been set up to like make me desperate to come back to it, like the Cursed Princess Club, there's always cliffhangers, there's so many plot threads that I want to know, like desperately want to know what's going to happen next. Whereas the Scrivener's Bones, it is interesting, it is fun, but I don't know, there has been things set up that I want to know about, but they don't have that same sense of urgency. And like, as I say, I'm 40% of the way through, but we still, even though in the very first beginning we set up that we were going to go to this Library of Alexandria, we still haven't gotten into the Library of Alexandria. There have been quite a lot of action scenes, and I tend to not be a fan of action scenes, so that could also be part of it too. So I guess there's a lot of reasons why I'm not making as much progress as I would like to be, but hopefully if I focus, we can turn that around. Hello, so quick life update. We did not get the house that we were hoping to get, which we've been crying about for several days, but what we decided to do to cheer ourselves up is basically move the bed out of this room. So now we have more room for the bed out in the lounge, which maybe is strange, but that's what we've done. It's kind of nice. And then this room now, because it's all empty, will be able to be more fully my library. I do think I'm going to film a separate video about reorganizing it. But if you see things changing in the background, that's why. Anyway, I also wanted to tell you about the book that I've been reading, so The Scrivener's Bones. I did finally finish it, and I really liked it. I do feel like in a lot of ways this book was kind of a setup book, because in this one, Alcatraz is learning about his parents and also learning about his powers, and there's kind of like a suggestion or a threat that there could be some darkness to the abilities that he has, which I feel like is pretty common in these kind of middle grade fantasy books where there's a guy who's a hero and then he has to kind of struggle with his internal darkness. So I guess the broad plot was setting that up, and then along the way of that was just a lot of silliness and fun. So that was fun. I really like the bits where he disses Brandon Sanderson's writing, because these books are kind of set up as it's actually being written by Alcatraz, but Brandon Sanderson has agreed to put his name on it. So there's a lot of like criticizing Brandon Sanderson's writing as like frivolous fiction and like way too long and just like lots of that. And also quite a few references to other authors. The ones I think I remember, there was L.E. Modesitt Jr., Asimov, Charles Dickens, Garth Nix, maybe another one. Oh, Michael Crichton. There was like a whole Jurassic Park joke in there, but like subtle enough that I think a lot of children wouldn't get it. So it does kind of have that factor where if you're an adult, you're getting like a kind of a different layer to the story. Anyway, even though it's taken me ages to get through, I am still enjoying it, and I have the audiobook for the next book, The Knights of Crystallia. So since I'm rearranging the room, maybe I will listen to my audiobook while I do that. So as you can see, my bookshelf library rearranging is going pretty well. My shelves are starting to look good, but there's still a lot of empty spaces, and as well I'm still surrounded by boxes. But anyway, that's a separate video. What I did do while I was doing all this is I was listening to the audiobook of The Knights of Crystallia, and I got all the way through it. So even though it's Sunday, I've at least made my way halfway through the series. Is it going to take me half of next week to get through the next half? It seems like it. But I will say the audiobooks are pretty good. In fact, the audiobook narrator almost sounds like Brandon Sanderson. I had to look it up. It's not Brandon Sanderson. And after I learned that, I could start to hear that it isn't his voice, but it's similar. And I feel like the way the story's being read feels very Brandon Sanderson-y, which is a good fit, I think, for the story. But my library actually has 2 audiobooks. So this is like, I think, older audiobooks. And then my library also has the graphic audiobooks, but those all have big whole cues, so that's why I went for the other ones. But I think the other ones are still good. And I often have problems with the graphic audiobooks because they put in all the music and the sound effects, and for me, I just find that very distracting. Like, it's too much sensory overload for me, and then I can't pay attention to the story. It's the same kind of thing like when people put background music behind their videos. Ugh, can't stand it. Anyway, the audiobooks are good, so I'm glad, because I'm going to try, if it doesn't rain, to go for another run tomorrow, and then maybe I could get through the whole 4th book, because it's not that long. It's only like 5 hours, and if I listen at 2 times speed, that's only 2.5 hours, so maybe I could get through the whole 4th book tomorrow. Anyway, the 3rd book, The Knights of Crystallia, in this one, basically Alcatraz has gone to Nilhala. the audiobook made me realize it's Nalhalla like Valhalla. When I read it physically, I didn't read it that way, so I didn't get that connection. So audiobooks are good sometimes for that kind of thing. So he's gone to this capital city in Nalhalla and meeting more of his family and just like more of these freelanders, I think. Doubting myself now. But anyway, basically the people who live outside of librarian control. So he gets to learn just a bit more about the bigger world. And there's a bit of a conflict going on with the librarians. Basically, some librarians are putting forward that maybe they'll make some kind of truce with the Freelanders, but there's some downsides to that truce, and like, are the librarians even to be trusted? One thing I will say, actually, when I first started looking up reading this series like many years ago, it was only available at my library like by request. It wasn't just on the shelves. And I have to wonder if it's because it's called Alcatraz versus the Evil Librarians, and it talks so much about librarians being evil that the librarians thought, we don't want this on our shelves. Controlling information, suspicious. But I do think in this third book, it is trying to pull back that message a little bit. Like maybe not all librarians are going to be evil. So once again, I enjoyed the story. I think it's really clever. I do enjoy all Brandon Sanderson's kind of like analyses of his own story, because Alcatraz is constantly talking about like why he's writing the story this way, and like he keeps like doing very non-typical things or going against the normal way of telling a story and then explaining why he's doing it. And I think especially for a younger reader, that would be really like educational, but in a fun way, because a lot of these like story tropes are things that you only really pick up on after you've read a lot of stories, but having it called out to you when you're younger could be kind of mind-opening, I think. So I do really like the writing style. It's not too silly for me, which is what I was afraid of. But I do think sometimes, like, the plot doesn't feel enough for me. And maybe it's just because these stories are so short, especially for a Brandon Sanderson book. And I just kind of want more from the story, but it's okay. I'm actually really glad I decided to read all the books at once, because then I do get more of the story. One other thing is, in this book I noticed references to Patrick Rothfuss, Terry Pratchett, Robert Heinlein. I think that's all I picked up on, but there might have been more. There's also definitely been quite a few bits where he's like making little digs at other kinds of story tropes. It's a lot of fun, I think. If you've read a lot of fantasy, I think you'll have a lot of fun with some of the things he's calling out. Hopefully, the second half of the series is going to keep the momentum, and I'm going to keep having fun. Hello. So I'm still working out how I'm using this new library as a background. Maybe like this. Maybe. But anyway, yesterday on my run, I did manage to finish off the fourth Alcatraz book, so Alcatraz versus the Shattered Lens. And in this one, basically, the librarians are attacking one of the Free Kingdoms, and Alcatraz goes to try and help. And I think that's pretty much all you can say without spoilers, other than, of course, chaos ensues, as it always does around Alcatraz. Okay, for some reason, my battery died. I'm sure it was charged. Anyway, what was I saying? I think it was, so my favorite thing about the series is definitely the talents. So I don't think I've talked about them yet, but basically certain people in this world have talents, but they're always kind of things that at first seem really useless. Like there's one character that's always late to things, one that's great at getting lost. There's another one who's just like bad at math, or one that wakes up ugly in the morning, like lots of really ridiculous talents. But they're always used in the plot in such clever ways where it like turns them on their head and makes them kind of like a good thing. So that's really cleverly done. And just in general, the plots come together in quite a clever way. Maybe not like a mind-blowing kind of way, but definitely clever. I'm still enjoying like the way that it's constantly messing with the reader. Like in this one, there's heaps of missing chapters, and it'll often refer to things that's happened in the chapters that are like intentionally missing. There's also a bit in this book where the characters are running away from something, and he's like, "You're running too, right?" And then he kind of tells you off for not running. However, as I said, I was listening to this on my run, so I was running. I think I should get a prize for that. I did also try picking up the graphic audiobook, and I couldn't do it. Not because what I would have expected, which is because of the sound effects or the music, but firstly, Alcatraz's voice. Like, it's narrated in first person, and his voice when he was narrating versus his voice when he was speaking were not the same, which meant I was constantly like, who's that talking? And I think it's meant to be because Alcatraz was writing this book when he's older, so they've used an older voice for the narrator and then a younger voice for the person talking, but still hated it. And then to even further confuse things, what they seem to be doing is dropping all the dialogue tags. So like when it says I said or Bastille said, any of those, it drops all of those, and you're just meant to figure out who's talking based on the voice, because it is full cast, so all the voices are very different, but honestly not necessarily that different than a good audiobook narrator can do. But anyway, I just couldn't keep track of who was talking without my dialogue tags. I missed them, and like, it's not the same story if it doesn't have the dialogue tags. So I just got really frustrated with it and bailed on it and went back to the older audiobook, which I don't think would be the popular opinion, but I just don't think I like graphic audios. Anyway, what else about this book? I think there was a very quick reference to the Wheel of Time, which I think if you hadn't read the Wheel of Time would seem like a really weird reference and not make any sense. So that was a little bit odd, but there was also a bit of a theme in this one that different people choose to live in different ways. It's not because certain people are like more primitive or whatever, it's just that different people have different preferences, and that's fine. I did like that theme. So I haven't yet started the 5th book, which I think is kind of the final book, and then after an extended period of time, because some people were unsatisfied with that ending, or maybe he always had it in the plan, I don't know. But then the 6th book is from Bastille's perspective. Bastille being the younger Knight of Crystallia that Alcatraz meets at the very beginning and kind of has a friendship, maybe more, with her. Anyway, that one is written with Jancy, and I just honestly don't know what that's going to be like. But first, I'll be reading The Dark Talent, which is technically kind of the last book. I don't know. We'll see. The other thing I did actually finish last night, though, which I have to talk about, is The Cursed Princess Club by Lambcat. I loved it, and I have to say, in a lot of ways, it kind of came together in the end like a bit of a Sanderlunch. Because I'm reading Alcatraz, and Alcatraz doesn't really have a Sanderlunch, not really, kind of. It's clever at the end, but not to that extent. But The Cursed Princess Club, the way that things came together in the end and all the plot threads interweaved with each other, and like things that had just been casually mentioned at the beginning of the series turned out to be important later on, like the way that happened, it was so satisfying. And just like by the end, I loved and cared about every single character and wanted a satisfying ending for all of them. In a lot of ways, I got it. It wasn't the ending that I think you would predict for this series at all, but it was amazing. Like, when I started the series, I thought just a silly little series about some princesses marrying some princes, and it was funny. Like, I laughed out loud more during the Cursed Princess Club than I did during Alcatraz. So I think Cursed Princess Club is more my style of humor, and maybe not everyone will like it, but I laughed out loud, and just the way that the story developed, and also just had so many amazing, wholesome, good messages in it. I loved it. If you haven't read The Cursed Princess Club, you should read it, even if you don't think it'll be your thing. Like, it's free on the internet. Free. Anyway, tomorrow I have my infusion, which is basically a long walk to the hospital and back. And during that walk, I will see how much of the next Alcatraz books I can get through. Hello. So today, while I was walking around, I did finish off Alcatraz versus The Dark Talent, or just The Dark Talent. I see it named in different places, different ways. Anyway, I finished it off, and I have to say, actually, it was a fairly unsatisfactory ending. And the only thing that kind of saves it is that right at the end, Bastille comes in and says, that's a terrible ending. I can see that I'm going to have to write the last book myself. So I'm glad that I have that next book ready to go. I do only have it on audiobook though. I tried to get the physical book from my library and it was saying in transit, but I think there's been some kind of glitch at the library where they're trying to deliver me an MP3 to the physical library, even though I definitely requested the physical book. So I don't know, it's a bit messed up, but at least I have the audiobook. So I'll try and get to that. The other thing I will say why the audiobooks are better is kind of the big writing gag in the 5th book is that there's footnotes, and Alcatraz is just using footnotes like crazy all over the place. But for some reason, the ebook on Libby doesn't have any of the footnotes. Like, it has a little asterisk where the footnotes are supposed to go, but as far as I could see, the actual footnotes aren't anywhere. And there's definitely no way to like link. If I could find them somewhere in the ebook, there'd be no way to link them to where it says the footnotes go. So yeah, that's pretty useless. So the audiobook, at least, like anytime we'll get to a footnote, the audiobook narrator will say footnote and then read the footnote, which is much better. So I did actually read like a little bit last night via the ebook, and I just skipped, I was like, well, I don't know about these footnotes, I just can't find them. But once I listened to the audiobook today, I was like, I can't go back to the ebook because now I realize how much I would be missing. But anyway, I guess I said it was an unsatisfactory ending, but there is like probably quite a lot that we learn about the magic systems, some quite big like twists and reveals that go on at the end, and a lot of stuff that has been set up in the earlier books that finally gets delivered on. So like, I still enjoyed this book probably as much as the others. I do wonder if these books had just kept going on as they have been, whether it would get quite boring. So I am interested to see how Bastille writing the story will kind of shake things up. It's kind of strange because I just, like, obviously Bastille isn't going to have that same very quirky writing style that Alcatraz has, but like if it's too different, it's not going to feel like it belongs in the series. It's a strange one. Anyway, since this is also a reading vlog where I'm reading all Brandon Sanderson stuff, this morning or late last night, there was an announcement about the Words of Radiance crowdfunding thing. That's fine. I've kind of been ignoring that because I don't really have any interest in having like big leather-bound books, and I like my editions of the Stormlight books better than I would like the big leather-bound ones. Like, I just don't have dreams of having a leather-bound library. So I've kind of been ignoring that, but then Brandon being Brandon has announced that he's written a 5th secret project book, and it's purple. And that's a terrible reason to buy it because, of course, it's still $50 US, and then shipping for New Zealand would be $35. Although I was happy to see that at least New Zealand shipping is not the highest. That's something. But then once you put exchange rates into it, it works out to be like $140. I just don't know that I can justify that. So I guess I'm waiting. I should just say I can't justify that. But I guess I'm going to wait and see when he announces the title and the cover, and I think they're going to read the first chapter. Like, once I learn more about it, I'm kind of hoping that it'll be something that I'm not interested in. But also, I'm trying to read all the Cosmere books, and he said that it was connected to the Cosmere quite significantly. And of course, I could just get the ebook, which would be a cheaper way to go. But then I just look at my little secret project section of my bookshelf and I think, wouldn't a purple one look nice? Although, admittedly, that is not a nice gradient. I don't know why he hasn't made a nicer gradient with the secret project books. Anyway, let me know down in the comments whether you are going to be buying Secret Project 5, because maybe that'll help me decide how much FOMO I'm going to have. Maybe tell me if you're not going to buy it. That's what I need to know. I need to know that I'm not alone if I can't buy it. Anyway, I will check back in with you again once I've finished Bastille's book. Okay, so I did finish off the last book of Alcatraz versus the Evil Librarians, so Bastille versus the Evil Librarians. I finished it off during my run, and honestly, I'm trying to decide what I have to say. I kind of feel like my overall thoughts of this series at this point is that even though I had a lot of fun with it, I think I'm gonna forget it because the main thing that really makes this series fun is the humor and all the jokes. And I mean, there is also the clever stuff being done with the different powers and the different talents. But I also think, like, even though that stuff was clever, none of it was like mind-blowing, something I'm going to keep thinking about forever. And then, as I said before, each of the books is so short that there's not really that much plot in each book. And as well, like, they're very action focused, which is not really my thing. It's the kind of thing I tend to just forget what happened. The last two books were slightly less like that. Like, they were a lot of action, but there was also kind of some more emotional content, and it's probably that emotional content that I'll remember even though normally I'd say I'm more plot focused than emotional focused, but I think it's the emotions that were like, I don't know, more impactful. So then every time I get to the end of one of these books and I have to give you my thoughts on it, I'm like, what are my thoughts? Anyway, Bastille versus the Evil Librarians. I did read somewhere that the reason why Brandon got Jancy Patterson involved is that he found it really hard to get the voice of Bastille right, and I can see he'd really set himself up for a massive challenge having this last book written from Bastille's perspective, because there's no way that Bastille can write in that same humorous way that Alcatraz was writing. Like, it's just not going to work. So he still needed to try and write a funny book, but also making it sound like Bastille's voice. And I think he actually did, or him and Jancy, in the end, did a pretty good job of it. Like, it is still pretty funny, not as over the top funny as with Alcatraz, but still funny in some ways. And I think he did a good job of setting some jokes up in the previous books that then Bastille got to deliver on. But I also can see that a lot of people would probably be disappointed in this last book because it just doesn't have that same voice. But for me, honestly, I don't think I minded it, but I also I don't think I liked it that much less than the Alcatraz ones, probably because sometimes I thought Alcatraz was a little bit over the top, so it was nice to have it dialed down with Bastille. And I did enjoy the emotional payoff, but I don't know, I think I'm going to forget the series. But as I said right at the very beginning, I am not target demographic for this book. And I was really afraid that I would hate this series because of the over-the-top writing style, but actually, I did have a lot of fun. Would I reread this? I doubt it, given the amount of books that I have to read, but I would recommend this to certain people. If you love puns and just really clever humor, clever but silly humor, maybe you'll like this. As I said, humor is really subjective, but I think if you like the humor in the first book, you'll probably like it the whole way through the series. And it wasn't as bad as I thought it might be. I don't know, I rated all these books 4 stars. I think they're really well written, but I probably didn't need to read them, but I'm kind of also glad I did. I don't know. Anyway, if you have read Alcatraz versus the Evil Librarians, I'd love to chat with you down in the comments. Or if you haven't read it, also let me know whether you're thinking of picking it up or not and why. And do also subscribe if you'd like to see more of my bookish videos. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you are doing well, and I will see you next time.